You're listening to Checking In, a self-help book club hosted by Adam and Amber, where we read self-help books each week and sit down to talk about them.
Disclaimer: the opinions recorded on this podcast are our own and do not reflect the authors mentioned here. Hey folks, welcome back to another episode. Checking in. How are you doing, Amber?
I was banned from Facebook.
Congratulations.
I was so high-key pissed off. It wasn't that I was banned. I don't really use Facebook a whole lot because it's for old people. But I was banned. How could you ban me? I was like, you should be grateful that I'm even using your piece of shit app.
Okay, so I hope that people will comment and tell us reasons they got banned from Facebook. What was yours?
Okay, so I shared a meme on my story and it got banned, but both the pictures on Instagram and Facebook are still up. The meme I shared on my story is still up, but the story itself got me banned.
Yeah.
I was just so fucking mad.
Well, I mean, you're a bad person and you're bad for sharing that.
It was somebody else.
And it was just
It was really funny. It was like my New Year's resolution is to become strong so I can throw my enemies in a lake.
And it was just a picture of somebody lifting somebody up into the air next to a lake. You know, the situation could have been anything. You know, it could have been somebody's little brother. When I got a 10-day suspension from Facebook, I think it was in 2020, it was for, I'm not sure what movie this is from, but it was a James Franco movie where he has a noose around his neck and he's standing on the gallows. And he says to the person walking up, who, you know, we're seeing from their point of view, as they're walking by, he goes, "First time."
Yeah.
So I posted that and I got suspended for violating their rules about advocating self-harm.
Oh.
Which is clearly not what was going on.
It's freedom of speech.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I'm dumping this and going to whatever Mastodon is.
Yeah, I was high-key mad. Also, so we changed the book.
In what way?
So we were going to read, and we started reading Why Does He Do That by Lundy Bancroft. It's kind of explaining angry and abusive men. It was requested a couple of times, and I had read through it a couple of years ago, picked certain chapters to read because someone had gifted it to me. Yeah. And I didn't finish it then. And then starting on it this past time, I was just I was crying, which I cry at everything, so that's not really news. But I was just crying and feeling so connected to some of the victims and some of the stories that were being told by Mr. Bancroft, who seems like a great psychologist from what.
And it's an important book.
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
I think you said that it was already it was kind of affecting you negatively, to which I said, yeah, I can't do this.
Right. We both
I got about 2 chapters in.
I was 3 chapters in.
And I was absolutely not, fuck this. Anybody who was listening to the last episode, the dominoes just started falling from there. Put down one of my dogs, one of my friends died, had these huge realizations, which it was not the only realization. And I've started a new course of therapy and just that. And
we started couples therapy too.
Yeah, and so that the therapy that I just started is specifically to deal with figuring out all the ways that my first wife fucked me up. Mm-hmm. And I'm processing that. And a lot of that was emotional abuse. A lot of it was physical abuse. We got the cops called on us a lot. And the problem with that is, I'm just identifying with the book way too much. except it's making me feel even smaller and wronger somehow because the book is about guys.
Yeah.
And I get that that's important, and guys do the vast majority of the things spoken about in the book. But guess what? I married one of these, extremely abusive people. She was just as much of a dick to me as she could possibly think to be. So I'm already trying to process all of this. And I was like, hey, fuck this book. This is going to be the first time that we're just going to toss this
Right.
out. We can't do it right now. We don't have the emotional bandwidth for it.
Because, I mean, you have to understand, like, we do try to be really funny and lighthearted and honest, but you have to understand, like, a lot of our own emotions and a lot of our own traumas can be really, really unearthed in some of these things that we're reading.
Well, I mean, like,
I was just like,
it wasn't even unearthing.
Well, yeah. And
it's
I
just
was
like, hey, I'm in the middle of a war. Let's watch a war movie.
well, and it was just like, how? I remember thinking, how am I going to talk about this?
So, sorry, folks who
Right.
started on that book.
I know, yeah. I know a lot of people really love it. Yeah.
You and I and everybody who gave it a false start last week are probably all immediately recognize what an important book this is.
Right.
I don't know that we have any business covering that in a podcast that's supposed to be lighthearted. I mean, we deal with heavy stuff.
Yeah.
We try to deal with heavy stuff in a lighthearted way, and I'll be damned if that doesn't bring us to the book that we actually just did.
Right. So, for some reason, this one was a controversial choice.
No.
I don't know why.
It's controversial if you're dumb.
I mean, I picked up this book this past summer, and I was like, this is going to be hilarious.
Yeah. I think a lot of folks picked it up last summer.
Maybe it's just like the traumatized lady I am, but I was just like, this is going to be funny, and this is going to be really authentic.
So this is I'm Glad My Mom Died by Jennette McCurdy.
Yeah.
Y'all know her from iCarly. I don't.
Right. So this is a memoir, right? Kind of like the Pete Holmes book we read. However, again, because I do my research. This appeared on a lot of self-help book lists for 2022.
Yeah.
And I think it's just because, in this memoir, as funny and as a brilliant of a writer she is, she's covering, and you know what? I'll just throw out these trigger warnings.
Here we go.
Trigger warnings, grief, complicated feelings with grief.
Definitely.
Eating disorder.
Big time.
Addiction, alcoholism.
Yep.
Familial abuse.
Mental illness.
Yeah. Sexual assault. I mean, it's definitely full of her trauma.
Yeah. This book's got it all.
Yeah.
In terms of that. And I feel like her writing style on this, which I believe is her first book, right?
Yeah.
Her writing style is very much like what I strive for. It's not flowery.
Yeah, no.
It hands you the facts and gives you just a little bit of personal spin to get you to realize, like, well, this happened and that person was there. These events transpired. By the way, this is kind of what I thought about it. Moving on to the next, and the little personal spin is always somewhere between hilarious and heartbreaking.
Yeah.
That's why this is a bestseller.
Right. And I mean, her story is so unique. It's not like it's something like a lot of people can particularly identify with, but the way that she is so genuine and honest about her experiences and in her writing, it really does hook a lot of people in because you know that it's coming from a real place, in my opinion. And the audiobook is amazing. I was recommended the audiobook from another podcast I listened to, and I can't remember exactly which one it was, but it's author read. She's hilarious in her delivery. And yeah, she also, Jennette McCurdy, if you don't know who she is, she was a former child star. She was on a show on Nickelodeon called iCarly. She also has a podcast now called Empty Inside.
That sounds like fun.
Right. And it seems like she just interviews people. I haven't checked out the podcast yet. I plan on it, but it seems like she's kind of just interviewing people
Yeah.
and having cool discussions.
And as part of the preparation for this / just for fun, we listened to Pete Holmes interviewing her
Oh, yeah.
on his podcast.
And of course, he's hilarious.
He's hilarious, but it really is like that episode should be called Things Pete Wanted to Say to Jennette McCurdy.
He does.
She doesn't talk a whole lot.
One of
in
the
it.
things I like about listening to Pete Holmes is he really does not have any shame in gushing over some of the people he
Yep.
talks to, which
I
I
love
think
it.
is really sweet. Because I'm kind of like that.
I try to. I make an effort to be that way. I'm
Right.
not naturally that way.
But I mean, all throughout reading this book, like straight up, I could not get his voice out of my head. Like, Jennette McCurdy, glad my mom died. How's it going?
Talking about being interviewed by morning radio hosts, like, oh, we've got the zoo radio this morning, and I've done interviews with morning radio people, and they are, I mean. This is not necessarily the case, but if you haven't been interviewed by morning radio people, imagine being interviewed in the middle of the night by somebody who's definitely coked up and just came from a comedy show.
And he was talking about his own book. He's like, he would come on these shows and they'd be like, he was religious and his wife left him. Pete Holmes, everybody.
Right, because the bullet points reduce. It reduces you to this really strange essence of a person that you don't recognize.
Oh my God. I just like cracked up so hard because I personally find so much joy in like watching or listening to these uncomfortable situations. And I know exactly what he's talking about.
So for the people that haven't read the book yet and have not seen iCarly,
yeah. Which I hadn't either.
we watched it last night.
Yeah. Jennette McCurdy and I are actually the same age. But when I was when I was young, iCarly was a little young for me. Like she was like 14 and I was not watching Nickelodeon shows when I was 14.
Yeah, they've got to have kids that are like a little bit older so that
Right.
the kids watching feel like, oh, this is an 8-year-old and they're really cool. It's like, sorry, dude, they're 11.
And straight up, like we watched iCarly, like the pilot episode, and I know there's several seasons of this show. Straight up, it sucked. Like it was bad. Like wow.
So pilot episodes are, I mean, everybody probably knows this, but the pilot episode, we're not going to have the characters down yet. We're not going to have. There's a lot of things that are not going to be down yet. It's basically going to be actors walking on stage, turning the cameras on, and like, here's what we figured out in the few weeks that we've been trying to get ready to do this, and then you come back, a couple seasons later, and then it might turn into something like the Golden Girls, where it's like there's just this
Straight
rapport.
up, no. The Golden Girls pilot was on point.
All of those were seasoned acters.
Right.
These are kids.
These are children.
These are kids, and it was a showrunner that had also been a child actor, which I don't know if you're starting to pick up on this, and like, no judgment, but child actors got messed up a lot of the time.
Yeah.
And then putting child actors in charge of other child actors, it has a lot of potential to mess them up. So essentially, where the book starts is Jennette talking about little things and big things with her mom that don't feel right. And even though she has no experience with any parents outside of her own, she can already tell like something's up. So her mom, if you were to armchair diagnose Jennette's
dear
mom,
God. I mean, listening and reading her mom, Jennette's takes on recalling situations with her mom is like, I mean, it's almost like I don't want to believe it for a second. Like I'm like, this is insane. She seems very codependent, which in turn makes her children codependent.
Yeah. So the parents will teach their kids how to be codependent properly, and then they
Yeah.
just carry on as they've been taught. I think there's also some bipolar disorder in
I
there.
was gonna say, yeah, I mean, straight up like with my I took psychology 101. So I don't really feel qualified, but there's definitely some kind of impulse control issue, maybe like a personality disorder type of issue with her mom. And I think a lot of people who have complicated relationships with their mothers really, really found a lot in this story as well.
Yeah. Complicated relationships with parents,
Yeah,
period.
yeah, just familial abuse and a lot of what Pete Holmes talked about.
This abuse doesn't look like hitting a kid, though.
Right.
It really
Right.
doesn't. This abuse never crosses into something that a neighbor or a principal or any other authority figure ever called somebody about. Nobody ever actually called child services.
No.
Because a lot of this stuff is invisible.
Right. It is codependent, making your child feel like you're their best friend and you're their only friend, and you have to strive for your parents' happiness.
You have to manage your parents.
Right.
She felt like she had to manage her parents'
Right.
emotions. She had to manage her parents' fights.
You'll see her kind of lay out the whole like walking on eggshells type of things that a lot of us are familiar with.
We watch the mom slowly introduce how to be anorexic.
Yeah.
Like how to properly be anorexic to the point where it's like, well, if you want to delay puberty, we need to restrict your calories even more.
Right.
And she wanted to stay a kid. She talks a lot about this in the final chapter, but like not wanting to act, but being forced to anyway.
Right.
Becoming a fairly popular child actor and not being allowed to develop, having to take on characters rather than develop her personality. All of that laid a really, really awful foundation for her to grow as anything close to a normal person. Plus her mom, this really stuck out to me. The dad that she grew up with, saying, hey, you need help to Jennette's mom on a regular basis. And Jennette's mom, like, being triggered by that.
Yeah.
To fly into a rage. Like, I don't need help. You need help.
And just like coming at him with like a knife.
Yeah.
Like, I don't need help.
Right. Clearly.
Okay.
Please go not need help somewhere else. A safer distance.
I mean, I think we can all know a lot of people, unfortunately, like that. And so along with all the issues that Jennette had to deal with as a child, and yes, she said throughout the book how many times I really did not want to be an actor. This was my mom's dream.
Yeah.
This is what she wanted me to do.
That's what she had wanted to do herself, but had given all of that up.
For you.
For you. So there's this guilt.
Right.
Like, the reason I'm not doing this is because of you, so you've got to do it.
Yeah, she has to take Jennette to her auditions and whatever kind of little actor meetings that they have to do.
And there was a lot of her mom had cancer.
Yeah.
And
I was waiting the whole time for her to be like the cancer was fake or something.
right. Honestly, there were so many other similar red flags.
She really did have cancer.
She really did have cancer. But
So mean.
But instead of like,
I know so many people who lie and say they have cancer. Like, why do I know that many people who have done something?
Jennette's mom is the kind of person who would have lied about having
Right.
cancer, but she actually did have it. Because she threw it in everybody's face, used it as a way to manipulate everyone from Jennette to strangers.
Right.
And everything in between. Like, if any block ever came up, if anybody was ever like, ma'am, you can't go, I had cancer.
Right.
I'm a cancer survivor. And people be like, oh, for fuck's sake.
I don't know. I just feel like maybe that like flew in the 90s, but I feel like now everyone's like, yeah, join the club.
Yeah.
Everybody has
Yeah. What? Are you
cancer.
38? Yeah.
We have no ozone layer. Jesus Christ. Anyway.
We have all the psychiatric drugs that exist in our water. Enjoy.
I liked a lot of what Jennette had written down about her relationship with fame. Straight up.
Yeah.
I know she prefaces a lot of what she says with what she thinks people are going to throw back at her, which I tend to do. And she's like, I know I sound very whiny, complaining when
Entitled.
when a lot of people want this, and I'm like, I don't know who you talk about. That sounds awful.
Yeah.
That sounds awful.
Yeah. Honestly, it's a lot like the author of Codependent No More's stuff, where you're just sitting there with your mouth open, just what? Why did anyone let this happen to you?
Right. Oh my gosh, I know. She says very frequently she does not like to be pitied.
Yeah. And here she is on this book tour, only meeting people who are pitying her.
Oh,
Yeah.
your life was so hard.
And meanwhile, she's like, that's really not the damn point. I feel like, as far as like tying this book back to the idea of self-help, Jennette went through several stages. It's the hero's call, the hero's journey, where she gets called once, twice, three times a lady, and she gets bulldozed by life to the point where it's like, okay, I really am starting to think that this other person is right, that maybe I need to seek help for example, bulimia. And separately, before that, what was the circumstances of her finally going to see a shrink? Going to see a therapist.
So see, this is not good. Her boyfriend.
Yeah, exactly.
Was like, I can't be with you unless you get help.
Yeah.
Which is, I'm glad that he is concerned about her, but you can't force somebody. Do I know that? Yes, I do. You can't force somebody to want to help themselves, even if they are telling you repeatedly they want help and they need you to help them. You really cannot. You can't hold their hand. You can't force them. You can't make their appointments. You can't.
Because they go showing up with a certain attitude, like, I don't belong here. Or I'm a tourist in this situation. Or I am going to find the reason while I'm here to go back and tell my significant other why I can't do this. No matter how small the reason. So Jennette goes to therapy, and it goes great until one day the therapist brings up her mom.
Yeah.
And Jennette finds herself freaking out.
Right.
About, like,
because her mom has died at this point.
Her mom has died at this point. It's already like it's too late to go back to her mom and ask, like, hey, what happened with it? There's no more questions that can be asked. She wouldn't get the truth anyway.
Right.
We know by the end of the book that she wouldn't have gotten the truth anyway.
Right.
And she becomes so defensive, she gets up and walks out and never comes back. And let me tell y'all, her mom was the reason she had to go to therapy.
Right.
But once it actually got to, like, the root of the problem, it was just too hot of a topic. Couldn't stand it, got up and left, and then went back to everything that had been the reason why she had gone in the first place.
She's like experiencing what any of us would experience whenever you're like in your therapist's office and they kind of tell you something and you're like, that was a little spicy, I don't know how I feel about that, but thanks. And then like you go home or, over the next couple of days and you're journaling and meditating and you're like, wow, I think that person was right.
I haven't exactly
You're
gotten
very
that.
You're very like open to like, yeah, tell me what's up. Tell me what's wrong.
Well, I view my ego as the enemy most of the time. I know it's not. I know it's not the bad guy. But my ego is the reason that when I was younger, I wouldn't be able to understand 99% of the shit around me. Not a useful ego is what I'm saying. So when I go to therapy, I really have to kill it, like it's like what taking a large dose of mushrooms used to do for me, which was like setting aside the ego and exploring like, okay, who am I though? So I go to therapy to get the work done. I'm not going to have somebody go, oh, honey, yeah, you're right. That's, kind of what the session yesterday was like. But generally I go and I'm like, hey man, like, can you give me the like right way to think about this? I'm doing this stuff and I don't like it. What is the answer? Write about it. Okay. All right. That's the answer to everything. Great. Cool.
Definitely not the answer to everything.
It's not.
Our traumas range from big to small, and they affect us all differently. But yeah, no, Adam is very receptive to whatever the therapist has to say.
Even if, and particularly if it hurts.
Right. I'm fine with that. I mean, maybe my therapist doesn't think so because I cry all the time, but
I feel like, no.
I'm fine with that. I usually will just be like kind of salty when they put forth something that I hadn't considered. Like, do you consider you're probably working too hard? Or do you consider this person's taking advantage of you? And I'm like, or do you consider maybe you're just good enough as you are and you don't have to be helping people all the time? And I'm like, is this bitch making sense? This bitch making sense.
I've perfected the like 3 seconds of silence after like a big like, do you think it's possible that this might be the case? I don't.
Yeah, I mean, for sure, they can definitely not be on the money.
It does not resonate. Sorry.
But so she goes to therapy for her boyfriend. I mean, we can all figure out that that's not going to work.
And a lot of people have probably done that.
Her boyfriend he deals with his own mental crises.
Yeah, he has a schizophrenic episode for whatever reason. I don't know if it's just because it's possible he turned 25.
Right.
And that's been the big schizophrenic trigger for any schizophrenic person that I've known. And the thing that happened to him is exactly what happened to a friend of mine in Nashville, where it's like, he shows up and it's like, hey, I got something to tell you.
Oh, God.
I don't want you to freak out. I'm Jesus Christ.
Okay.
And like, why? How do I keep my face from doing the thing where?
Interesting.
Because it's like maybe there's the knee-jerk reaction to nervously laugh like Jennette did. Maybe there's the sudden reaction to like just immediately call bullshit.
Yeah, right.
Or in my case, all three, and that third reaction is, oh fuck.
Right.
Like,
oh God.
Yeah. What are we going to do about this?
And then they'll be like, don't tell anybody. I'm like, oh, okay.
Don't worry. I won't, except for your family.
Yeah. I don't know.
Come get him.
They all seem to gravitate towards Jesus or some kind of godly figure.
Yeah. There's a messianic complex that sometimes happen with schizophrenia. I don't know why.
Can't you think like
we haven't read a book on it yet?
Yeah. I don't know. Well, like I would choose somebody different. But whatever.
I need you to not tell anybody I'm handsome.
Oh, I'm going to tell everybody. So then he ends up helping himself, or his family kind of intervenes there. And once he is out of the psych ward, they resume their codependent relationship, and she's trying to get him to go to therapy. She's trying to get him to stay on his medications. She's trying to like send him like articles and think pieces to read. And of course he's not going to read any of them, and he doesn't want to go to therapy. And I mean, is that better than like the people that lie and say they want to go to therapy. I don't know. Like
It
wasting
seems like once he
everybody's
went on
time.
medication for schizophrenia, it kind of seems like it took the wind out of his sails.
Yeah.
So he's no longer going to recommend therapy for her. He's no
Right.
longer going to go to therapy. He's not going to try to help anyone or himself.
Right.
And Jennette feels like a lot of this malaise is his quote addiction to marijuana, which I feel like
I don't know about that, you know?
I think that's inexperience with dealing with marijuana, but I see what she's saying, but it seems like the problem was whatever it was he was trying to medicate with it.
For sure. I mean, you can be addicted to anything, sure. I thought that was a little strange. His marijuana addiction. Smoking the reefer. I don't know, especially for California people. Like, I thought that was kind of interesting.
Right. So then she turns 15.
No. We skip around a little
No,
bit.
just kidding.
This is kind of in her 20s.
Yeah, this is in her 20s. So
How does she dump this guy?
she just does.
Oh, he's
It's
just
like
like, bye.
you turn the page and he's gone.
Yeah. She's like, see ya.
and-
I mean, like, at least he wasn't like crazy. Like,
Right. Stuff starts
that's good.
coming out about the creator of iCarly
right.
around this time. And if y'all do a quick Google, he got fired from Nickelodeon in 2018. There was even an iCarly reunion a while back that Jennette did not participate in.
Oh,
because,
really?
Yeah, because she felt like it would be
Well, also,
declaring
maybe
that,
it's because that show sucks.
well, granted, we haven't seen any of the later episodes,
don't
but I can
know.
kind of tell from the premise
Damn,
that
like,
it's not for us.
I'm like, is this on par with the things I was watching when I was a kid? Because, man, this is bad. I
feel
know.
like Boy Meets World was better at doing a similar thing,
Right.
you know. And I don't think Jennette would argue with us.
You
on
know
that.
who I
like
wanna-
she didn't like the lines. She didn't, dig
Right.
the characters.
Right.
She
Her
enjoyed being
character-
there with the young lady that was playing her co-star. She really enjoyed that friendship and still does.
Right.
Which you can tell
That's
that when you're
cool.
watching the show. To me, that my favorite part of watching the show so far is just those two kids are having a good time together because they're together.
Right.
I think that at least Jennette would have been having a miserable time.
And it's
if-
so funny because Jennette deals with an eating disorder, and her character is like food.
yeah.
Like, even in that episode we watched, it's like, ham, like, I gotta get something to eat. I'm hungry,
Yeah.
like, funny. Tomboy girl, like,
She's
she
very-
likes eating.
She's very paleo. Does that make
I don't think
sense?
she's trying to be paleo.
No, I mean like she's A, aggro, B,
Oh.
B, hungry. Like she wants meat and she wants to attack anyone that wrongs her. She is not the kind of lady that would let somebody put her down.
I mean, and I guess the moral of this is like, it's called acting.
Yeah. Absolutely.
But I was just like so stunned watching that. I was like, this is not
Yeah.
like her at all. This is pretty ironic. Because she is talking about it through the book, certain scenes, certain experiences on the show, and dealing with her mom and dealing with the producers and the adults kind of in charge, and
being weirdly
Yeah.
sexualized. Do we put this as sexual harassment? Does this cross into that territory, or is it just super duper weird?
it's just kind of creepy. Like,
Yeah.
I'm never going to ask. I work with children,
Yeah.
and I'm never going to ask a child to put on a couple different bikinis.
Boy, that's a really
know,
good point.
That's strange.
That is a really good point. The
And
other
if I
thing,
have a child that's uncomfortable, like wearing a bikini as opposed to a one piece or board shorts, there is no part of me that's going to try to convince this child that they need to be wearing a skimpier outfit.
yeah. So let's talk about loss of control.
Right.
Let's talk about how Jennette, from the time she's single digits until the time her mom dies, is never in control of anything that has to do with her life. So her mom says, "You're going to be an actor." That's the first thing. And then her mom says, "Well, here's how much you're going to eat."
All right.
or rather, here's how much you're not going to eat.
They're restricting her calories to something like 500 a day.
Yeah.
Something crazy like that.
Yes. Probably
And
stunted her
she
growth.
doesn't help. Well, because she doesn't get her period till she's like 16.
Right.
She doesn't hit puberty.
So when you're an actor, you and have an agent, you're not in control over the roles that you're offered
Right.
or try out for, really, especially if you're a child actor. So we're already in a situation where like your job is to just completely let go of all control at all times.
And what seems to be a huge issue is like you think you could have some kind of camaraderie with the other child actors, but she talks about it being so competitive
Yeah.
that you're kind of taught to like hate or undercut one another.
Yep.
But
Like coming out of
yeah.
auditions and like, she walks by another kid and the kid like, looks down
Right.
and won't make eye contact.
She's like, follow that, suckers. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, every time she really nails an audition, she doesn't have a sense of pride about
Right.
it. She looks at her mom to see what her
Right.
mom's reaction is. And if her mom is giving the thumbs up, then this like feeling of dread drops away for like 1.5 seconds and then comes back. So that's what she is performing for, is to get like that thumbs up from her mom or her mom to say, you did a good job. But the rest of the time, it's just like, you're not this or that enough. You're not this or that enough. The creator of the show is the same way. It very like, look, the whole thing in Hollywood apparently is you don't want to be known as being difficult. And people,
right.
people who are difficult will say, I don't want that role. I don't want to wear that outfit. I don't want to go to auditions today.
Yeah.
I have the flu. She has to audition
With a fever.
with a
Oh my
fever.
gosh. I mean, I'm not a parent, but thinking of a child having to do some of these things, or her mom saying she's difficult for asking to go to the bathroom.
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
She
Like,
was
that
not allowed
breaks
to go to
my
the bathroom.
heart.
So as she's getting older, she doesn't have control over. So she's on iCarly now.
Right.
And she has people coming up to her like, kind of like what was happening with Dave Chappelle, where they're like yelling your catchphrases at you. And that's not
I'm Rick James, bitch.
that's not a human interaction.
No.
That's being treated like a sign or something. Like you might as well be the television set that they're, shouting the lines at. So it's dehumanizing. And she doesn't have any control over whether or not strangers of any variety come up to her in public. And I'm here to tell you that 90% of the time, I don't want to be approached by a stranger,
No.
regardless of where I am. I don't know what the fuck you want to talk to me about. I don't know what you want to talk to me for. Mind your own goddamn business. And
It's like, I was just asking for the time, young man.
exactly. And
Get lost.
Jennette's default is very much like that. And yet here they come.
Right.
She's disrupting parades at Disneyland.
I was so impressed with how real and honest she was. I've said that like 800 times, but about her anger and her bitterness.
Yeah.
And how it kind of encompassed her whole energy during this period of her life.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like a lot of people, including myself, can identify with that.
Oh, yeah. Same.
Just being immobilized developmentally by your anger.
You can't take in experiences. You can't take in new things. You can't appreciate stuff when you're that angry.
Right. Throughout the story, she does take some time to set up some boundaries. So, of course, you're, as a reader, like celebrating that throughout the chapters.
Yeah, here's character growth.
Right. She, tells her management team that she does not want to act anymore, which is great.
Yes.
And which
I felt a rush of relief
right
when she did that, and I'm sure she did too. Or at least like just a Here comes the rest of my life.
Right. And, I don't know. Maybe I would kind of be this way. Like, I mean, you got enough money. Like, I ain't going to be doing this no more. Like, if it's something you don't like.
Right.
Like, I'm thinking about, I don't know, like if I was rich and famous from working at Urban Outfitters, a job I hated.
Right. You would cash out.
You
do one last job.
I ain't folding no more motherfucking t-shirts.
One last job at the Urban Outfitters.
I ain't picking up no more fitting rooms. But
which actually brings us to this week's sponsor, Urban Outfitters. They outfit urban people.
Dude,
I can't even do this one.
I had so many people running in there.
It's a dumb name.
Running in there thinking it was like sporting goods, like or like outdoor outfitters. I don't know. Whatever.
This is actually for urban planners.
I thought it was for urban outdoorsmen. Sure.
But no, it's socks with cats on them, and that's
right.
Anyway. Sorry, that's my little digression.
But no, I just like, because I have no idea what it's like to be an actor other than when I was in the theater of Gadsden and I was really famous for being Anne Frank. I really couldn't stand people approaching me at my coffee shop job and telling me how much they loved my portrayal of Country Fried Anne Frank, I guess.
You sure about that?
No. No, I'm totally kidding. But yeah, I don't have any experience being an actor, so I just really put in that mindset, like, think of a job you really hated. What if you were pretty good? Mm-hmm. What if you made a lot of money and people loved you?
Yeah.
In a way, loved you, quote unquote. Mm-hmm. Like, would you still like that job?
So here's the other part of that same thing. She's an adult now, and this is the equivalent of like if we got famous for the drawings we had on the fridge when we were kids. She does say that.
Yeah. She says, like, if you were famous for your middle school band or your dance recital. Mm-hmm. Like, middle school is, like, let's not talk about it. Like,
yeah. We're not us yet.
I was ugly. I was cringy. Like, straight up. Like, I just want that erased from my memory. Hers does not get to do that.
Yeah.
Hers is still on Netflix.
Yeah. We get to go watch it right now. You can't find my drawings from when I was a little kid anywhere. None of that's on the internet. I still draw like a little kid, but that's not the same.
And that's what people be putting their kids on the internet.
Indeed.
That's a different topic for a different show. Because I got so many gripes today. But
the airing of grievances.
The airing of the grievances. I really liked where she came to the realization that she had, a problem with her eating disorder. She had a problem with codependency. She has a problem with alcoholism.
So she goes to somebody who's a therapist / life coach.
A real,
different person?
She goes to a therapist.
That's right.
But he life coach. But I mean, okay, life coaches are taking your money.
Yeah, they're selling you something.
That shit.
But she does recognize,
me.
like, all right, so my life has become untenable.
Unmanageable, for sure. I mean, she loses a tooth throwing up.
She loses a tooth throwing up in an airplane.
Not being, like, hit in the face or anything. Yeah. Like, she's just throwing up so much. Her teeth are getting fucked up.
Yep, it's
and
eating
she
her
lost
teeth
one.
out. Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, that would be a huge wake-up call. And she slowly outlines her relationship changes towards food.
Yeah.
And
still complicated. Getting better.
I mean, and I think that a lot of women can identify, even if you're in eating disorder recovery, which a lot of people I know and love are, if you are like me, I don't think anyone's going to mistake me for having an eating disorder, wink, wink. But just talking about like the restricted eating, the calorie counting, the weighing, the obsessiveness that you can put on yourself.
And then the shameful binging and purging.
Yeah, and your body is definitely something that I think women can identify with.
To me, it was really helpful when she talked about like, and her therapist was great for this. She's going to this therapist, and she's supposed to keep a log of like, here's what I ate and here's whether or not I threw up. And she is, as far as the reader knows, completely truthful about all of it, which yay for,
Right.
for really being truthful.
Right. I know
about
a lot
that.
of people have an issue, like they want their therapist to like them.
Yeah.
So you're like
No.
not giving like your full shit, your full Monty, but I'm also like, you're paying these people, so
Right.
like get it out there.
You're just
like
wasting your
they
money.
literally can't tell anybody.
Right. So she's reporting that like she's okay. So I've been in therapy for this number of months and I have not gone 24 hours yet. And at some point she actually
without binging and throwing up.
without throwing up, and then she actually goes like 24 hours and then throws up.
Right.
And or has a string of 4 days. That, like it keeps on getting a little bit longer at a time. And she'll screw up and goes to her therapist, and her therapist says, "That was a slip. You're doing great."
Right.
Like let's consider that a slip. Let's not let that turn into a slide. So like you had 4 days in a row where you did a really good job. You had a shitty day. And as a result, like willpower is nothing in the face of this kind of thing.
I think
Like simply saying, I'm not going to do that. That's not going to do shit when you're more heightened than you have control over. So she goes and she throws up. And instead of like, all right, so it's back on. I'm going to go eat all this, and I'm going to throw that up, and I'm going to go eat all this, and I'm going to throw that up. Instead, she strings another 4 days together until she has another screw up. And like, that's helpful.
yeah.
That's really helpful for people to understand. Like, okay, so I don't need to feel like A, shame over this, and B, like everything's fucked.
Right. She put so much pressure on herself her whole life to do well for her mom. Now her mom's gone. Who is she doing well for? And
It's scary. She doesn't even know what she wants to do.
right. And I mean, how could you? I mean, you don't know. And so,
Somebody's been in charge of your dreams your whole
Right.
life.
but I really liked that part that you just talked about where she was talking about how your recovery is not always linear. It's not always uphill or, downhill, doing great. It's hard, and it takes day by day strength, and you'll have other stuff come up, and you'll have other stuff that's significant that you need to talk to your therapist about, but you're also dealing with your number one issue. So it's very realistic portrayal of recovery, I think. And
Agreed.
yeah, I mean, and her second therapist was a guy. I personally never wanted male therapists. I really no. It was just like a definite no for me.
It's
Until
too close to being a trigger for some stuff for you.
right, until I had a therapist in Nashville at the Nashville Center for Trauma say, I'm going to change you over to a guy therapist, which our first session I cried the whole time in the room. Our second session I cried a lot of the time, but over the course of the time I had in Nashville till I moved here was so my male therapist, kind of like a male nurse, a male therapist, became so dear to me. And he really was one of the first people who he told me, I want you to feel like you can. Oh my goodness. This is the first time I'm about to cry on the podcast. I want you to know what it's like to talk to a man who's not going to devalue you, who's not going to try to fuck you. And you can have a conversation with me and I can help you.
Yeah.
And, that was so important. And
Some men are just people.
Yeah, and I'm so grateful for that experience as much as I was resistant to it at first.
Yeah.
So, yeah, when she had a male therapist, I thought that was really cool. She
Yeah.
didn't speak about it like I just did, but, I think that's very helpful.
It did seem like she truly, truly admires this guy
Yeah,
as almost as much as she hates him.
right. Sometimes, yeah, especially if you're going to therapy for some kind of addiction type of situation, you definitely, I feel like, can resent
It's not fun.
your person.
Yeah. So she's all her life, she's had her mom telling her what her dreams should be. Her mom's telling her how to accomplish those dreams, saying, like, look, what you're feeling inside does not matter. You have to continue to get this job done. And
She had no bodily autonomy.
she had no bodily autonomy. We haven't mentioned this. Her mom was still wiping her butt when she was old enough to type letters. Her mom was showering her
yeah.
when she's 16, 17 years old because Jennette's not going to be able to do it properly.
Giving her vaginal and breast exams.
Yes.
When she's in her teenage years.
Super fucked up. So she gets through all of this only to we're getting to the part where she's not mean, she's not like a hateful person. And the title of the book is a real attention getter,
Right.
but that's not the reason why it's the title. When her mom dies, she has to start untangling this knot of so many cords, wires,
Oh, right.
strings, however you want to put this. And her dad takes her aside as she's kind of just barely starting to begin
Right.
this journey and is like, hey, so I'm not your dad.
By the way. What? What? Spoiler alert.
Yeah. So she doesn't find this out while her mom's alive. Her mom does not divulge this information on her
Right.
deathbed, as she probably should have.
Are you serious? Yeah. What?
And the guy that raised her is who is her dad.
Right.
Is very like, I'm not sure what to do about this. Should I tell her? And then the,
His new
stepmom steps in
girlfriend,
and is like, yeah, you
You gotta
definitely
tell
need
your
to
kids,
her.
dude.
You have to tell her. No matter how like tacky she was about it or how much Jennette resented it, this is information that she needed.
Right.
And it's earth-shattering information. And by that, I mean, sometimes you find out that you're not who you thought you were your whole life.
Right.
And something that can really upset something like that is finding out, you're adopted and finding out when you're in double digits. That, once your personality is formed, once your frontal lobe is finished developing and you really have a okay, well, here's who I am. Just kidding. No, it's not that guy at all. It's this jazz musician, or this classical musician who has a jazz band.
Yeah.
I'm glad they met. I'm glad it was a positive interaction. I wonder if they've, and by positive, I mean barely more than neutral.
Right. Yeah.
They don't have a fight or anything.
How dare you?
It's obviously awkward and a big relief, but, that's just another one of those things that her mom super duper selfishly did and then just cowardly took it to her grave.
Yeah.
So she's never got to deal with it.
What the hell?
Yeah.
Ugh. It makes me want to punch this lady.
So how do you then not just turn around and do 90% of this stuff to somebody else?
Right.
Because this is all you know.
Uh-huh.
Well, Jennette stepping in, breaking the cycle, going to therapy,
Absolutely.
getting treatment, trying to be honest about herself. She wrote a damn book about it.
Right.
She had to write a book about it. That's it, whether or not she released it to the public, that's totally up to her. But I really get the sense that she had to write a book about it to really get to the heart of untangling all of this. And you can tell that it is, at this point, untangled because she worked backward, it feels like. It feels like she was like, here's all these problems, and I'm going to go back and, without saying so, give you the root of all these problems. I'm going to tell you when they started. These are all things that she covered in therapy, all things that she had to sit down and write about. And part of that that makes me feel like, because my therapist often tells me go home and write about it. And sometimes it's prose, sometimes it's songs.
Yeah.
And I feel like Jennette probably, and I hope she's listening. That would be really cool, but I doubt it.
My notes app is like, don't look at it.
So she gets home from a therapy session and she writes 8 paragraphs
Yeah.
about this thing that happened that is, I think, where this began. And that way she writes it down. She kind of takes a step away from it. She looks at it through the eyes of an adult instead of through the eyes of a child and goes, yeah, that makes sense. I think that's part of why these chapters are so short.
Yeah.
And the chapters being short like this keep it super interesting. She is not filling up the pages
No.
with flowery descriptions of things. She's not trying to get across all sorts of extraneous information.
No.
It will be as simple as, the room smelled of chalk and stale coffee, and the walls were completely bare. And that's it. That'll be her, like, here's the environment that 7-year-old me walked into to do an audition. The adults had displeased looks on their faces. I do this. I cry on cue. One of them wrenches up his face. I don't know what that means.
She doesn't tell you how fucked up it is.
She just lets you realize
gives you
it.
the information, then next chapter, and you're like, whoa, wait, what?
Exactly. You're at every single time you turn the page to the next chapter, you're stunned. This is great writing. It's simple, to the point, great writing. And Jennette does a wonderful job of delivering it with just the right tone so that we know what she means.
She's an incredibly gifted writer.
Yeah.
Coming from a failed writer. She's very, very, I hope she writes more books.
Well, I've got some news for you.
Ooh.
She just signed a deal for her first fiction book.
Look at somebody researching over there.
No, I just got high, and now I know that.
Okay.
You know how high people will just decide shit about
Read an article
about
or
George
something.
Washington.
Oh my God.
No, that's true. I did research that. I got high, but I also did research that. I researched it while high.
I wanted to talk about, while we still have some time, complicated feelings of grief, which she closes the book with. I think a lot of people can really, really connect to that.
Dad.
Sorry. Wait your turn. No, I'm just kidding.
I'm sorry.
We all have dads we hate.
I'm sorry.
Therapy's not enough. I have to fight my father. We all have dads we don't like. Dads are the worst. But no, she complicated feelings of grief. I think a lot of people can definitely identify with that. It's the title of the book. You're not supposed to be glad your mom died.
Sound effect.
Right. But when people say her mom was giving and loving and a great mother, that bothers her.
Yeah.
On her gravestone. Mm-hmm. Of course, we want to be respectful of people who have passed away. We want to remember the good things about them, but we're not going to be rewriting history.
I agree.
I have complicated feelings about my own biological parents.
In what way? No, that's not a real question.
Mortality. And when you put it in her book and you see how much her life has really flourished since her mom died and since she was able to let go and move on and still love your mother and mourn your mother, but at the same time, you really do have to put some responsibility on the adult in the situation that you were given so much responsibility, you were given so much abuse.
We are given a little bit of insight into why Jennette is still able to love her mother. Mm-hmm. She gives us a little bit, particularly toward the end of the book, a little bit about her grandmother.
Oh my goodness.
Where do you think her mom got it from? What kind of environment do you think her mom was raised in that
Right.
maybe caused her to be this way? So we really get the sense that, a lot like my dad, where we have a parent who sabotages their child. We have a parent who is overbearing and awful to their child. But the child, in hindsight especially, can see that little light in there that is in the middle of all that darkness. The darkness is all the stuff that they were handed, that they held on to, that they carried with them through their life, that explains the bad decisions. And that little teeny tiny light is still in there. That's what they were born with. They weren't born like, I cannot wait to have kids so I can fuck them up. They got fucked up on the way out and on the way up. And then they turn around and they do a percentage of it to their own kids.
Right.
Some of them wind up doing more,
Right.
because of various disorders. But Jennette seems well aware of, I get why my mom was like this. My mom was kind of awful to me and did a real good job of sabotaging the adult me that was going to come later. But I think I figured it out.
Yeah.
And I think that my mom didn't have to be that way. And she could have turned out
Right.
otherwise.
She could have broken that cycle.
Sometimes it's your turn to break the cycle.
I know.
Sometimes it's several generations that have to break the cycle. I've already made my oldest aware of this. Like, hey, man, I'm doing my best, and I'm not going to do the best. There's only so much truth that I can see at any given time about myself and the way I'm raising you. So I'm not saying, like, go easy on me. I'm saying I'm not trying to be a dick. I'm not trying to be mean. I'm not trying to ruin your life. But I know that there are going to be some things that come up later when you're an adult that are going to be because of me. And it is your job to figure that out and not pass that on. That's what I've done as well.
I am just like, I'm way too mentally ill to be a parent. I don't know. I go back and forth all the time, but yeah, I usually land on, nope. I don't think that's going to be a good idea. I know that sometimes our therapists will want us to do, I say hour as in the universal hour. Therapists will want to do
Y'alls.
child work, inner child work, and grieving. And I think a lot of Jennette's feelings were kind of similar to some of my own, where I was grieving the fact that I didn't have a special daddy-daughter relationship. I did not have that.
Yeah.
And I wasn't going to have that.
She's continually disappointed in
with
that.
the person that is my biological father. And I wouldn't want that with who that person is, because that person is destructive.
They just be toxic at you.
But you're kind of grieving the fact that you didn't get that chance anyway.
Yeah.
And that part, I know a lot of people can resonate with, and that part was very, very hard.
I'm really glad that Jennette wrote this book. I feel like the reason why we're talking about it on a self-help podcast is Jennette needed way more help than she ever would have realized, and she's getting it. She got it, and she's getting it.
And you can too.
She's breaking the cycles. And some people are going to be reading this book like, oh, hell yeah, I do that. And then a few chapters later, like, oh, shit. Okay, I now recognize that maybe I have that problem. Or I now recognize that, my parents might have put some darkness in me that I didn't want. Maybe I need to jettison that.
And also, I don't know if you forgot, number one, it's our fucking podcast.
It's our fucking podcast.
Number two,
We make the rules.
I always keep it 100. I ain't gonna sit there and lie. I ain't gonna sit there and say, oh, I loved freaking Body Keeps the Score, man. That was the greatest book I've ever read. Oh, I really wanted to read freaking Why He Do That. But I didn't, because this is my fucking podcast. Like,
Yeah.
what? So yeah, any book, that can resonate as self-help. I think shit. Sometimes the Bible is self-help. Whatever. You do your thing.
A lot of this seems to be like self-help / help yourself. Figure it out. Damn it. So we've already started on what will probably be the next episode's book.
Dun dun dun. I hope we can get through this next one. It's called "I Hate You, Don't Leave Me." I just like saying it like that.
And it's about my first wife. And all that stuff.
It is about
Come after me. BPD.
Borderline personality disorder.
Yeah.
That one took a second for me. Borderline personality disorder. I have a lot of experience with people who have been kind of diagnosed that way.
Yeah. And apparently it's super common. It's probably the most common of emotional disorders.
Right.
That feels wrong. And
I do try to be aware, like I never want to be like, well, that person's narcissist, that person's bipolar, that person's borderline. I don't want to ever be like that.
But yesterday, my therapist armchair quarterbacked that shit.
Right.
And she was like, after relaying about 25 different bits of abuse.
Adam comes in there with a list.
I came in there with a list. Well, I mean, if this goes back to the idea of like, I'm trying to remember trauma, so I've got these, big heavy gloves on with my hands down a well trying to retrieve jewels that I can't see or feel. And I didn't want to be trying to relive trauma while trying to list trauma and tell my therapist about it. So I sat there and I came up with like 20, 25 different things that she had done that I felt like I don't have any idea why she did this shit. And it turns out that one of the things about BPD is that when they're abusive, it's random. And it's just random ways of torturing those who are generally closest to them in an attempt to, and I got a sense of this at the time, in an attempt to like dare that person to reject them.
Right.
So I'm reading this book for a reason because I have to find out about.
Well, we're all reading these for a reason, Adam.
I have to find out about why I've been through what I've been through, and once I have perspective on it, maybe then I can heal from it a lot better. I'll understand what box to put this in, so I can put it in storage, or maybe drop it off at Goodwill, or burn it. Which I've actually burned some of her stuff embarrassingly recently, thanks to hanging on to too many things during moves and not checking boxes. So, yeah, it's going to be I Hate You, Don't Leave Me, and we'll be back with that next time. Do you want to give the folks the socials, Amber?
Oh, yeah. Ooh. So we are at checking.in.podcast. You can, look at our stuff. Look at our links.
Jennette's got that podcast.
She does. She has Empty Inside. She also has, I'm going to pull it up. One day I'll be prepared. She's just Jennette McCurdy, verified.
Well, hang on. How do we spell that?
JENNETTEMCCURDY. So she is on there verified, and yeah, she has all her stuff. Oh, she's so cool. So yeah, you can check out her work and see what she's got coming up, and check out her podcast. Check out podcasts she's been on. She's been on quite a few.
I'm really looking forward to the fiction book that she's writing.
I know. She's a gifted writer. I'm excited.
She do good. All right, folks. We'll see you next time.
Thank you.